Hey everyone. So last week we spoke about Venus and the ascendant in astrology and how they related to how we relate to others, how we come across to others, the things that we find beautiful, the things that give us comfort, and how we can approach, our attitude to life and our attitude to other people. So this week we're talking about a few more of the personal planets, and we're talking about Mars and Mercury. So make a note now of Mars and Mercury, what houses and what signs they're in your chart. Mars is, of course, the god of war, which makes him sound fairly frightening, although he isn't. Mars, in astrology, represents our life force. So it is our motivation, our passion, our excitement, our aggression, our energy, what things get us fired up or riled up or angry or excited or sexually attracted or any of those sorts of things. So I call it like the internal flame in every person is Mars, and the way in which that flame burns is shown by your natal Mars. So this can be things that make you angry, why you are physically or sexually attracted to certain people, or certain objects, I suppose, if you're like some members of the community. It kind of shows us what makes us feel alive. And so these represent, our passion projects as well, the particular issues in society that make us angry or make us really excited, or the things we love to do. A really important part of Mars, and of course he represents the divine masculine energy, so he represents the opposite to Venus. So Venus is about what gives us comfort, Mars is about what throws us into the world and what breaks the boundaries, between us and the rest of the world. So Mars is really exciting, but as we know, with any type of emotion that's dynamic, if we bottle that, we repress it, it comes out in negative ways. So, if we bottle anger, if we bottle fear, sometimes when we try not to care about things, or when we feel unmotivated at work, or unattracted to a partner, or, that sort of thing. They're all examples of your natal Mars being restricted in some way. And this is when people often come to an astrologer or a psychic or a counselor or whatever and say, I just don't feel alive anymore, I feel a bit dead inside, I just don't feel excited, I just feel the. This is where we look at your Mars. So if you want to bring passion, you want to bring excitement, you want to bring, or you even want to understand what makes you tick a little bit more, you look at your Mars. So he travels very close to the Earth. So he's almost like the security guard that's on the lookout for opportunities, who's on the lookout for things to defend against. And again, when our Mars is restricted in some way, either, people can get in our way, or we can feel shame or fear around expressing any of those emotions. So particularly if you have, I'll talk about the aspects again in a few weeks, if you maybe have Mars in the 12th house, this is really, really common for people who are intuitives or who are natural healers. But of course, the 12th house being the house of the void or the subconscious, Mars here represents someone that often has lessons about having to assert themselves, having to carve a dynamic path, because it's like best laid intentions don't always happen because life gets in the way. So that can be really, really common. I feel like a lot of you have Mars in the 12th house just because it's one of the hallmarks of a very deeply intuitive person. Because, you learn that intuitive ability by having to see through situations as they are and not just react to them. The other thing about Mars, it also represents men and the kind of men we attract. So again, and this can be friends, this can be colleagues, this can be clients, this can be, in relationships and sexually. But again, it's, like I talk about with the signs, there's a high road and there's a low road. So, if you have Mars in Scorpio and, you've tended to attract men with power issues who are very intense or very secretive or very manipulative or that kind of thing, you can channel that Mars into activities where that Scorpio energy is better represented. So I have a friend who had this sort of string of horrific men, very manipulative, controlling men. Of course, they were like a father, and we know all that story. She had Mars in Scorpio. So where we ended up sending her was martial arts school. And that's where she met her husband, you know, because it was the same use of that energy, that calculating, observational, deeply transformative Scorpio energy, but in a really beautiful dynamic, which was martial arts. So if you are looking to attract a relationship, understand your previous relationships, or even the men that have been in your life, they tend to show up as an example of where your Mars is. So have a think about that. And the other thing I want you to think about with your Mars as well is it represents our fears, because of course Mars being our life force, one of the things that drives us most of the time that we're unconsciously aware of are our fears. And of course the greatest fear, other than public speaking, is of death. And the choices humans make when they're acting out of fear are so insane. And you can often recognize that in people who are manipulative or who are aggressive or who are just difficult or confused or dramatic, that they're acting out of fear of loss or of something. And so if you ever get that feeling of dread or foreboding, or you know, you've had to overcome fears in your own lifetime, or you don't really know what you're afraid of, or any of those sorts of things, Mars is a really helpful planet to look at. You know, so if you have Mars in Taurus, you know, there might be fears around losing your physical strength, losing the ability to escape, losing the ability to make money, losing your physical home, you know, all those security, loyalty-based things that are Taurus. Mars in Gemini is often afraid of being bored, being ignored, being irrelevant, having nothing to add, having nothing of worth, that kind of thing. So, you know, Mars in Capricorn or Mars in Leo are often very afraid of being forgotten as well, or having their contributions not recognized, or having it all for nothing. So, you know, Mars can show us that unconscious part of ourselves and what's driving it. So again, it's not about curing it or fixing it or judging ourselves. It's about, okay, what's a more healing way, if we recognize this fear, that we can deal with it? So look at your house, look at your Mars sign, and it can also show you how your energy manifests. So if you have Mars in Taurus, slow and steady wins the race. Do a bit every day of whatever thing it is. Strength training. You know, if you have Mars in Gemini, short courses, spin classes, those are the best ways in which to use your energy. So again, if you're looking to improve your life through fitness or through training, your Mars will show you the best way, not only to meet people who are attractive, or who are, or to be attractive in that way yourself, but what kind of training and physical activity and fitness is the best for you and will be the best mentally for you as well. So that is Mars. So life force, passion, physical attraction, how we prefer to have sex, how we relate to men, the men we attract into our lives, how we deal with fear and aggression and the issues that matter to us and that make our blood boil or bring our blood pressure up, or those sorts of things. So, and again, blood pressure is a major part of Mars as well. So if you've had blood pressure issues, it's worth looking at what triggers your Mars, and then looking at, health and fitness options that suit your Mars sign that you can, rebalance that with. So Mars is really fantastic. I know he's called the god of war, but he really gets a very bad rep. One of you are very intuitive, because I've just got a message here saying, when is your next video? It's so funny. You can just tell that I'm like tuning in to do this video, and you're all sending me emails saying, where is the next video? It's here. I'm trying to talk to you. So that is Mars. Mercury is a really interesting one as well, because Mercury is the messenger god. He is the multi-gender winged messenger from mythology. And he travels at just a little bit faster than the Earth. So he is closest to the Sun, and he spins a little bit faster than Earth, and his orbit is a little bit cuckoo. So when we have a Mercury retrograde, rather, that is the time in which Mercury's orbit slows down and Earth catches up with it. So, you know, if you've ever been parked next to a car and you both take off at the same time, but this one's moving faster, you know, it can feel like you're moving backwards, which is what happens in a Mercury retrograde, which we're in at the moment, till August 19. So it can feel like we're moving backwards or things are going chaotic. What it actually is to do with the orbit of Mercury. Mercury's not moving backwards. It's just orbiting slowly, more slowly than usual. So if you've ever wondered how Mercury retrograde works, that is how. Mercury in the natal chart is the messenger. So it represents a few things. It represents how we learn, how we absorb information. And this is really important because, you know, a lot of us didn't have a great time in the school system. A lot of people, you know, don't. It's a very, you know, in most standard schooling, it's very rote learning. It's very, you know, it's about memorizing for exams. It's not about learning for learning's sake. It's not about teaching kids how to learn or how to enjoy obtaining knowledge. It's very, very stressful and very, very difficult if you don't fit into the status quo when you're at school. So if you've ever had trouble with your schooling or with teachers, look at your Mercury, because it will tell you a lot about your specific learning style. You know, and I know a lot of people, they don't, you know, in older age, they don't go back into education because they felt stupid the first time. You know, and I deal with a lot of people who say, you know, I left school early because I had a terrible time, but now I think I'm stupid, or I couldn't do a university degree, or I couldn't study whatever because I'm terrible. And what it is about, Mercury shows you how you need to learn and what, not just what topics are interesting to you. So the house that your Mercury is in will tell you what topics you will naturally absorb quicker. So for example, you know, if you were looking at learning something spiritual and you had Mars in the 8th house, shamanic work, learning about deep meditation and the occult and that sort of thing would probably resonate with you more than trying to memorize all of the archangels. You know what I mean? So everyone has their area of expertise that they learn about very easily. So the house of your Mercury will tell you this. But knowing and understanding your schooling experience and how you were taught different things, even about your own identity or about your role in the world, is really important, I think, to live a fully embodied or understanding life. Because for one thing, it shows you how you communicate with others unconsciously. And again, last week we spoke about the ascendant, which is how we come across to other people. Mercury also represents how we speak and how we communicate with other people. So, for example, if you have Mercury in Sagittarius, you're very good with big concepts. You grasp things quickly. You're always a little bit ahead of, you know, a lot of people. You tend to leap ahead to things. And sometimes it's frustrating because it's like other people aren't listening or other people aren't catching up. Not necessarily the case, but you're very good at linking, you know, all these different conceptual ideas together, you know, like the Sagittarius. You know, if you're someone with Mercury in Pisces, you kind of learn by osmosis. You know, you can just sit there and maybe not even talk in a conversation, but you'll walk away and you'll have listened to all of it, or you've learned all of it, or there'll be a movie on in the background, or things will come to you in dreams. And my friend has a Mercury in Pisces daughter who was really struggling with school, learning her times table. So they started playing it when she went to sleep, and she kind of learnt all of it in the space of a week, which was kind of really hilarious to us because they had spent so much money on tutors and after school testing and all these types of things and flashcards and God knows what else to teach her child these times tables so she could, you know, pass the grade that she was in. And she learned better by listening to it as she was going to sleep and just kind of playing it through the night. She just kind of absorbed it in that dream state, which was amazing. But there you go, Mercury in Pisces. So if you've had an interesting time with schooling and it's impacted your self-esteem or how you access you know, how you access learning or how you access your own abilities or trust your own abilities, a lot of that comes from how intelligent we think we are and how much we value what we have to say. And so if you have struggled with that, that will relate very strongly to your Mercury. You know, if you're someone with Mercury in Capricorn, you know, you might like things to be very well explained, to know the reason why. And Mercury in Virgo is like this as well. It's very analytical. If you know why you're learning what you're learning, you can absorb it better than just being told to memorize it for the sake of it. You know, if you're someone who has Mercury in, let's say Mercury in Libra, you're not going to be motivated, you know, by a really chaotic sort of teacher that doesn't seem to have their shit together. You know, things that are really well formatted, things are presented in a really nice way. Learning one-on-one, so one-on-one tutoring, one-on-one teaching is fabulous for Mercury and Libra people. So we all have independent styles of learning, and this is so fantastic. And we need all of those different skills. But if you doubt your own intelligence, you never share those. So Mercury will teach you how you best learn and how you can best communicate, and also how you find people who get you. So people who share the sun sign of your Mercury are often people who you just kind of click with. Like they just kind of get what you're about and what you're trying to say. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well. The other thing about Mercury is, you know the phrase, don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so Mercury shows us where we may have had some difficulties because of, you know, not being able to speak up, or not being able to communicate in a particular way, or not being able to advocate for ourselves, or, you know, lessons in our life where we had to be the bearer of something that wasn't our responsibility. So again, looking back on your early life, your Mercury will tell you a lot about that as well. What area of life, you know, have you had to be the messenger? And then again, you can channel that into a more positive way. The final thing I want you to know about Mercury in your natal chart is it's where you need duality, where you will always be looking for answers. And like I said, it travels closest to the sun being our source of growth and light and knowledge and wisdom and expansion over the course of the life. So Mercury, traveling so close and always a little bit ahead of us on Earth, brings you extra answers. So it's like where the messenger god is serving you in this lifetime is where your Mercury is. So where you'll always need answers, where you'll always find a sense of duality, and where you'll learn lessons about duality, which I'll speak about in a second. And where, like I said, you're being helped to know more, where there's things for you to learn about and to become wise about in this lifetime. So if you're looking to be an expert on something, that's where your Mercury is. That is what you are naturally good at learning, what you're naturally good at teaching. So, especially if you're an entrepreneur, have a look at your Mercury. This is what you speak about all the time. There's no coincidence that I'm always talking, especially on social media, about transformation, about healing, about dealing with the body, about recovering from trauma. All of that is 8th house stuff. I have a Mercury in the 8th house. So, you know, if you apply that to your own work, and again, if you're an entrepreneur, people go, oh my God, you're an expert on this. Because it's what you learn about, what you experience most easily, and what you can teach about, and what will be received. Like I said, we all have an individual message, and your Mercury is your message. So, duality is the final lesson. Duality is something that we struggle with these days because we're taught that if we're happy, we aren't allowed to be sad. We can't be grieving and very, very excited for a concert. We can't be in love and outrageously angry at the state of the world. We can't be healed but also still suffering pain from a situation. Okay, and all that's bullshit, okay? The human nature is duality. Nature itself is duality. You know, the same water that nourishes us can flood and can drown us as well. The same fire that gives us life, as in the sun, burns us and dries things out as well. Humans have duality, okay? And learning to accept and balance both parts of yourself and not trying to hide one or promote one and forget about the other is a lesson we all have to learn. So where your Mercury is where you have that lesson, where it's okay to balance two opposing, I guess, personality traits or beliefs or ways of thinking. So that's a really interesting one I want you to think about as well, is how do you experience duality in that area of your life? And, you know, do you allow that to just be? I mean, for example, Mercury in Taurus again. someone who likes things to be very simple, very straightforward, very to the point, very grounded. But at the same time, this is someone who dreams about luxury, who dreams about mythology, who dreams about, you know, beautiful surroundings and all these kind of extraneous things. A lot of people with Mercury and Taurus were artists because, of course, Taurus, on top of the security, financial, foundation aspects, is about Venus and fertility and beauty and art. So, you know, being able to balance those two parts of yourself, just as a really easy example, is a lesson that you will experience through your Mercury. So, that is Mars and Mercury. Do keep me posted on how you go with it this week. And I'm going to put up an information video as well through the week about Jupiter and about Chiron. Not because they're not important, they're very, very important, but I feel that I really want to focus in the last week on aspects rather than just talking about the planets in the 6 weeks that we have. So through the week, I'll just upload an information video on Jupiter and Chiron, maybe a couple of the asteroids as well, just for you to watch and just have a wee look at in your chart. Jupiter is about luck and growth, so that's a nice one. And Chiron is where we are a teacher, and it's also called the Wounded Healer. So both of those will be really interesting. Have a wee look at around about next Friday. And then next Friday or next weekend, we're going to start talking about the outer planets, which is the big lessons in life. So have a fantastic week. I hope you enjoyed the full moon last night and it didn't send you or people around you insane. And take it really easy this week, okay? Take care of yourself. There's still one more eclipse to go, so there's still more information incoming over the next few weeks. Okay, have a good week. Bye!